the cold silence of space, an embryonic engine waits in calculated suspension, dormant, patient, seeking only a host to ignite its cycle. A genetic machine, perfect in its function and divine in its horror, born not of chance but of design. Its dual origin as both an engineered genesis pod and an evolutionary apex embryo haunts the deepest corners of our imagination. Though this highly adaptive construct likely emerged long before humanity itself, its presence here and now stands as a testament to its relentless resilience, matched only by the extraordinary hostility of the nurtured life within. This bioengineered relic, its organic algorithms surpassing all recorded life in predation, reproduction, and sheer survivability, has been encountered repeatedly across multiple star systems. An early incident, and arguably one of the most significant discoveries, unfolded on Acheron, a desolate moon in the Zeta II Reticuli system aboard an ancient derelict vessel of unknown origin. Whether the ovomorphs resided in the ship's cargo hold or in a subterranean cavern hidden beneath that ominous time-worn structure remains unconfirmed. Yet one feature asserts itself regardless of the location. The eerie blue mist, its bioluminescent glow revealing the slow stir of air around the leathery pods, feels as alluring as it is foreboding, a visual warning of some unknown and unimaginable cosmic danger. But what is this consistent anomaly that was interacted with by Executive Officer Thomas Kane on LV-426 in 2122, then revisited by the crew of the Anisadora in 2137? This spectral mist was also observed by the synthetic Andy on board Renaissance Station in 2142 and exhibited on Earth in 2120 on board the crashed vessel named the Maginot. Notably, the egg clusters found in the sublevels of Hadley's Hope in 2179 displayed no such phenomenon. This was most likely due to the ovomorphs being freshly laid in the presence of an active queen, reflecting an evolutionary adaptation to high xenomorph density that eliminated the need for self-replication. Furthermore, the eggs had no need to enter a low metabolic survival state. Additionally, under one of the two theories presented here, these eggs, unlike those on the derelict, had zero technological support, whether human or engineer, to regulate or preserve them. If we begin with evidence from human encounters and their observed outcomes, it becomes clear that the blue light is a purpose-built interface, a process designed to sense its surroundings and activate the egg when conditions demand. This luminescent field likely also serves additional functions, regulating the environment, sterilizing the area, preserving the egg's integrity, and deterring intrusion. The most pressing question, however, concerns the source of this membrane-like security system. Is it an external technology employed by either the ancient pilot of the derelict and possibly by humans, or could it be a biological secretion generated by the eggs themselves? What follows are two opposing theories through which I will attempt to unveil this cryptic mechanism, revealing its design and the purpose it was meant to serve. Theory 1. External technology, engineered safeguard systems, engineered field using a photonic tripwire and navigation lattice. To understand why the colour blue is so prominent surrounding the eggs, one must look to Rayleigh scattering, the diffusion of light by particles much smaller than its wavelength, such as air molecules. This phenomenon explains why the sky appears blue during the day and then turns red at sunrise and sunset, as light passes through a greater portion of the atmosphere, scattering the shorter blue wavelengths away. The thin haze surrounding the pods allows us to see this sheet of coherent blue light, which would otherwise be invisible. Shorter wavelengths scatter more efficiently, thereby in low light, blue appears brightest in thin haze. The scanning drone used by the deep salvage team, seen on board the Narcissus in 2179, utilized a similar high-frequency short-wavelength blue light, approximately 450 nanometers, for the finer resolution detection of life signs, radiation leaks, and biological anomalies. However, inside the egg chamber beneath the fossilized giant within the derelict, this concoction of microscopic aerosols, only visible due to low light conditions, may include natural humidity and dust, but it would certainly contain intentionally placed seed particles to form a photonic lattice. These particles are synthetic and can be best described as programmable particulate biotechnology, microscopic units that behave like both cells and machines. Their size and electrostatic charge, energized by the traveling photons, enable the mist to hover at a steady height, rather than dispersing into the rest of the chamber. This lattice, in conjunction with the particles, is a fixed, consistent light-filled grid, projected across the chamber's surface, originating from nearby powered photonic crystals, with repeating patterns that enable it to trap, reflect, or guide specific frequencies when disturbed. Therefore, the lattice acts as a sensor net mapping motion, temperature, breath patterns, and elemental signatures, using an advanced form of spectroscopy in the immediate vicinity of the eggs, ultimately serving as a photonic tripwire for anyone or anything foolish enough to be curious. The location of the egg chamber visited through the derelict, in relation to this acting safeguard, is significant for further understanding this potential engineered technology. Assuming that the fossilized being was even one of their kind, considering their vast size difference. If this large cavernous area is indeed the cargo hold of this once venerable but now forgotten craft, despite the light merely equating to a low-energy scan, then it would still imply the existence of a great intelligence capable of constructing a power source with fail-safe measures that can endure for thousands of years after the ship's deactivation. Alternatively, a more insidious possibility is that this winding vault of Horus, which does not align with the craft's crescent form, could be part of a larger subterranean system beneath the moon's surface, with its own power source and an extensive trove of untold aberrations and archaeology yet to be discovered. In any case, this theory would proceed as follows. Once an organic or inorganic intruder breaches the light field, discontinuities form within the photonic lattice. These inconsistencies enable the engineered seed particles which hover in the mist and are coated with microreactive surface layers to communicate with photons emitted by nearby photonic crystals. These seed particles not only give the lattice its visible form, but also constitute the sensory capabilities of the detection process. The information interpreted would include key details such as motion mapping, body size, temperature, and breath, particularly CO2 spikes, which then indicate a viable host. If the interference is determined to be a living organism that meets the desired requirements, unlike a synthetic whose presence does not activate a response, a signal cascade is triggered, and the seed particles then mediate the signal between light and data. Once this data is extracted from the haze via the photons and target confirmation is complete, the photon technology sends a return signal to the seed particles, which, in turn, excites the resin network surrounding and connected to the ovomorphs with a charged electrochemical stimulus. I speak of the organic substrate in the form of veins and fibers seen beneath the eggs, which act as a living circuitry and organic scaffolding. In the stillness of the encroaching horror, measurable in milliseconds, the ovomorphs become primed and a rapid cellular reactivation phase energizes the facehugger within, essentially screaming an incubator within grasp. Almost immediately, the petals dilate, exposing the inner membrane, and the parasite carrier's instincts take over. The organic parasite capsule already possesses the innate capacity to withstand the passage of time and an extraordinary range of adverse environmental conditions. Yet it is the synergy between the photon-based technology and the species' intense metabolic, morphogenic and hyperadaptive cellular resilience that forms a biomechanical union of near-absolute protection for the deadly organism dwelling inside. Of course, we are measuring this within the realm of moderate environmental stability and are not accounting for direct gunfire, natural disasters or a thermal nuclear explosion, which would surely destroy the organism, perhaps. In any case, this photon-based engineered technology would provide additional environmental regulation, such as gas exchange control. This would extend the embryo's slow metabolic stasis if communication between photons and seed particles enables the construction of a semi-permeable barrier, allowing trace amounts of carbon dioxide and oxygen to be transferred while preventing other unwanted gases from interacting with the organic material. These seed particles would also contain antifungal and antibacterial nanoparticles, which help prevent microbial decay of the eggs over decades, centuries, or even millennia. To reinforce the intelligent design of this protective matrix regarding egg preservation, this photonic guardian network can be viewed as a living analog to cryosleep, gaseous, autonomous, and biologically triggered, rather than purely mechanical. Drawing on detailed knowledge of the organism's manipulation of pheromones, the architects of this system would surely have developed neuroreactive pheromone analogues to artificially suppress facehugger activity even further, effectively generating a robust incubation stasis field to work in conjunction with the ovomorph's already prolific metabolic suspending capabilities. Lastly, the atmospheric barrier would require deterrent mechanisms to prevent any non-target species from intruding and inflicting the common forms of damage that could render the ovomorph and its parasite ineffective. When Kane approached the photonic security perimeter, he encountered a sharp interference noise.
There's a layer of mist just covering the eggs that...
A harsh mix of electronic crackles and feedback that resonated through his visor. This frequency spike resulted directly from a disturbance within the photonic lattice, which was calibrated to detect CO2 emissions, body heat, kinetic vibrations, and electromagnetic field fluctuations, all signatures of a living host. Consequently, although the harmonic feedback posed little threat to humans or other host-class organisms, the technology's archived galactic database of biology allows it to detect and repel smaller life forms, such as rodents, insects, and other scavengers, by overwhelming their senses with harmonic disruption, causing disorientation and in some cases proving fatal. If what we hear in this sequence is merely the audible bleed-through of the stable resonance frequency reacting to the distortion caused by Kane's presence, then it becomes understandable that humans fittingly lack the sensory range to perceive the deterrent field as a pest would, a unity of technology and biology that favors the parasite. The spectrum output of such a defense system would likely extend into both infrasound and ultrasound, designed to induce sensations of dread, nausea, anxiety, pain, and in some cases death. An accompanying electromagnetic pulse can disrupt certain nervous systems, while the blue and ultraviolet photonic flicker would serve as a visual deterrent to non-human and non-mammalian eyes. Given that the photonic technology and seed particles exist in constant symbiosis and communication with the organic resin floor network attached to the eggs, enhancing both preservation and detection, it is plausible that this relationship also facilitates the release of trace neurotoxins, or hallucinogenic alkaloids in aerosol form. These compounds, calibrated to affect non-target species, would function to repel or incapacitate potential intruders. Equally impressive is the conduit's ability to trigger resin seals to harden across the egg surface layers, forming an almost impenetrable barrier against most biological threats and safeguarding the parasite within. These interactions represent the inherent capabilities of the organism's biology, but in concert with the blue mist technology designed to interpret and amplify its organic mechanisms, the ovomorph reaches its highest possible effectiveness. However, given that the two remaining locations which displayed identical blue light fields arguably have no connection to ancient engineered technology, perhaps a second theory might prevail. Theory 2. Egg-generated biology. Bioengineered safeguard systems comprising a bio-aerosol incubator, acid-based smoke chemistry, and pheromone cloud and behavioural primer. A multitude of harrowing first-hand accounts attest to the extraordinary biological feats and survival capabilities of the end-phase organism, recognised as a true evolutionary apex, shaped as much by deliberate design as by nature's relentless refinement. It should come as no surprise that the xenomorph maintains high molecular functionality under conditions unfavourable to most forms of life, continuing to thrive where others fail. Given this, it is reasonable to assume that its complex hyperadaptive cellular architecture, governed throughout its life cycle by extreme biochemical efficiency, is most pronounced prior to infancy during the embryonic suspension stage. Within this theory, which relies solely on the organism's biological purity, with zero reliance on external technology, the blue bioluminescence and mist produced only by the eggs serve a purpose analogous to that of a small number of unique Earth species that utilize calcium as a near-universal signaling ion. For example, the jellyfish Equoria victoria employs a protein called equorin, which, when bound to calcium ions, emits a blue bioluminescent glow used for defense and possibly communication. The ovomorph's equatorial vent pores secrete warm microdroplets rich in adhesive mucopolysaccharides, which naturally attract and retain water from the surrounding chamber. As the air cools, the moisture saturates and lingers, allowing a dense vapor to hover close to the leathery pods. These vents also function in reverse, reabsorbing condensed microdroplets to maintain near-total internal humidity. This prevents desiccation of the facehugger's highly flexible tissues and, crucially, allows for the recycling of H2O for both internal regulation and external egg preservation. The living aerosol released by the eggs is partly composed of protein and lipid-rich microdroplets. Dispersed within the mist are calcium ions and photoproteins analogous to equorin, dispersed with every exhalation. Their interaction causes the vapor to emit the characteristic blue luminescence, observed in all three encounters, enveloping the ovomorphs in their infamous photonic haze. Any movement through this highly sensitive displacement zone alters its density, charge distribution, and light scattering patterns. Much as a spider senses disturbances in air currents, or an electric fish detects distortions in an electric field, the mist essentially becomes the nose, sensing CO2, heat, and moisture signatures from the host, and causing a swift change in microgradients, thereby shifting pH levels and creating a host-present signal. All of these factors ripple through the mist, but it is the fibrous conduit beneath the ovomorphs that enhances the reception of this information and helps inform the eggs of the corresponding chemical reactions required for a particular response. This living organ functions as a network, not too dissimilar to that of mycelium, the root-like network of fungi found on many life-bearing and nutrient-rich planets, which can grow to cover vast distances and communicate via chemical signals and electrical impulses. When the mist is disturbed by a nearby host, any affected microdroplets triggered by calcium ions and pH spikes begin to fall and settle on the veins and fibers. The substrate is highly absorbent and chemically tuned to bind calcium ions and interpret charged mucopolysaccharides. It also has extremely sensitive chemoreceptive, electroreceptive, and photoreceptive tissues that monitor light intensity, flicker patterns, calcium ion binding pulses, and electric field distortions, all of which indicate the presence of a suitable host. Once the substrate receives these inputs, it integrates them. Calcium propagates as a traveling wave through the fibers, with neighboring channels synchronizing, enabling the signal to gain coherence and direction. At this point, the substrate knows where the host is moving, based on accurate information about the strength of the disturbance, duration, proximity, and vector of movement. The substrate then transmits preparatory signals upwards into the egg's basal tissues, initiating metabolic readiness. This cascade triggers neuromuscular calcium surges, inducing coordinated sheath and membrane contractions, and ultimately priming the facehugger's musculature for a spring-loaded launch, driven by its tail, following the ritualistic and dread-inducing petal dilation. Should a disturbance persist or intensify, the response is not limited to the nearest eggs. The substrate can synchronize multiple ovomorphs based on the quantity of the hosts or threats posed by lifeforms within range. This selective coordination is essential, as it will also prevent the premature activation of isolated eggs and ensure that preservation remains the utmost priority. This organic network functions as a deliberate, well-organized system and can be broken down into 4 simple categories that work collectively. The mist, egg tissue, and substrate can all sense independently, but when they function together in collective harmony, a coherent, self-regulating system of distributed intelligence emerges. Weak signals in the air are received and recognized, becoming strong ionic waves that travel through the fibrous veins and eggs. Eggs benefit from acting as a unified organism rather than individuals. Before the embryo can find a host to gestate in and begin to grow, the ovomorph's seemingly dormant condition is very much chemically alive and behaves like a hive, a localized biosphere of shared intention. With no loud movements or an obvious mechanical trigger, the soft blue luminescence gently draws hosts closer without appearing overtly threatening. Then, under the guise of lifeless inactivity, the eggs do not merely react, they intelligently anticipate. As observed by a unit of the United States Colonial Marine Corps within Hadley's Hope in 2179, adult xenomorphs had reshaped the colony's interior by constructing hive-like walls and secreting a powerful, fast-solidifying resin, potentially silicon-based, as part of an active effort to alter their environment to better suit their needs. Given that the ovomorphs and the hive's fibrous vein structures share organic material with the xenomorph genome, it is plausible, albeit never confirmed, that these veins possess the latent ability to extend outward and harden into a resinous seal, effectively isolating and securing their position with hive resin until discovered by a host. If sufficient nutritional resources are available, whether silicon compounds or organic matter, what the Marines interpreted as a hive built by busy little ants may in fact represent something far more deliberate for the ovomorphs, an intentional protective cocoon constructed to safeguard the embryo carrier at its core. Lastly, it is important to address the influence of semiochemicals, specifically pheromones, and the powerful role they play as behavioral primers, not only for the xenomorph but also utilized by the facehugger. As the guardian, the transporter and deliverer of the embryo, the facehugger does not rely on sight to target its host. Instead, it responds to chemical cues. Pheromones are chemical substances released by an organism that influence the behavior or physiology of others of the same species. In this case, the surrounding mist functions as a pheromone medium, a diffusion field carrying volatile semiochemicals secreted through the egg's pores. These compounds signal when the field is disrupted by an intruder. Heat displacement, carbon dioxide gradients, and fluctuations in moisture all trigger a behavioral response in the parasite carrier after the egg is primed. Crucially, the facehugger reacts not to the presence of the steady mist, but to its distorted absence, a condition that shifts it from a state of suppressed metabolism and restrained aggression into immediate activation. The blue mist operates as a pheromonal restraint field that ultimately suppresses facehugger reactivity. It then enforces host selectivity, a process entirely synchronized with egg activation, ensuring embryo implantation occurs only when environmental and biological conditions are optimal. Once all requirements have been met and the overmorphs connected to the resin network are satisfied that a potential host is present, the facehugger awaits petal dilation to perform its first, powerful, plyometrically driven leap towards the victim. Theory 2, the egg-generated safeguard system, offers a glimpse into the unsettling molecular elegance of the so-called perfect organism. Yet when considered in isolation, such a system would demand extensive metabolic reserves, capable of enduring for millennia, an expectation that strains biological plausibility, even for the xenomorph. Theory 1 presents a solution to this, but it is a more troubling alternative. By amplifying the overmorph's inherent biological functions through external technologies attributed to the ancient makers, it provides a mechanism for preservation measured not in decades but in millennia. This interpretation gains further weight when one considers the concealed egg chamber beneath the derelict, an ancient vessel whose decayed exterior belies the sophistication of the chamber's shape and design. And yet, the absence of any comparable engineered technology on Earth or aboard Renaissance Station complicates this conclusion, suggesting that whatever safeguards exist on LV-426 may have been situational to that event. There may be no definitive right or wrong answer. However, with the blue mist present across all the observed scenarios in question, it becomes increasingly plausible that the overmorph's photonic protection barrier is, at its core, a natural defense mechanism generated by the eggs themselves, in concert with the resinous floor network that sustains them. Yet the ancient being, the space jockey who once commanded this exotic craft, would have possessed an intimate understanding of xenomorph biology. More than that, its species would have been instrumental in engineering the organism's final form through experimentation. It follows then that the egg chamber beneath the derelict represents a unique convergence of both theories, a hybrid system in which photonic and seed particle technologies, designed and deployed by the ancients, operate in harmony with and to enhance the inherent biological signatures of the overmorph's defensive matrix. In essence, both theories may be valid, and what we witnessed on LV-426 was merely a glimpse into the profound knowledge and masterful engineering of an elder race about which we know very little. We can only speculate as to which aspects of the perfect organism were deliberately engineered and which arose through natural evolution. One conclusion, however, is inescapable. This primordial yet advanced humanoid species must have influenced the xenomorph's purity in some fashion. Regarded by some as the xenomorph's progenitor and ours, these beings were nonetheless not immune to the hostility of their own precious cargo. Whatever emerged from the ship's pilot long ago, its ferocity, elegance, and immense size stands as a testament to the overmorph's chemical complexity and the uncompromising purity of the organism it produces.